Offspring, the narcissist and children. I have explained previously why it is that we regard the act of impregnation as a material asset in the narcissistic armory. It is not only the promise of impregnation, but the act itself, and what this act creates, that produces a whole host of benefits for our kind. This is the approach adopted by numerous of our kind, those who see children as additional appliances from whom fuel can be drawn, pawns to be used in the repeated triangulations which can be orchestrated with the primary source and the former primary source. They are also a method by which we are able to claim the achievements and the accomplishments of our issue as our own. Not all of our kind adopt that approach. There are those of us who regard the idea of offspring as a threat and a hindrance to our agendas, and therefore choose not to have children. Why would we want someone to come along and steal our limelight? From the moment a child is born, it is sufficiently pathetic that it requires nigh on 24-hour assistance. It cannot walk, it cannot feed itself, it cannot clothe itself or wash itself. It must be tended for on a repeated basis. If you were to look to our kind to do this, you would find that there would not be any assistance forthcoming. Not only are we notorious in our desire to shirk menial tasks, unless we identify that there is some considerable benefit to us in doing so, but we do not see why, our lack of accountability, we should have our needs pushed to one side in order to facilitate the care of another. Sense of entitlement. Even though that child is a product of our loins, there are those of our kind who adopt such a view. You ought not to be surprised by that. We behave the same with our parents, our siblings, and wider relatives. We are like that with friends of both short and long-term standing, and naturally we behave in such a way with the person that we supposedly love, our intimate partner. Why, then, would you expect anything different from us in respect of a child? We have no emotional empathy. Our needs come first. The child is an object, like you are, like our brother is, like the neighbour is. The child is there to be utilized by the narcissist for the furtherance of the prime aims. In such circumstances, therefore, the decision not to have children by a narcissist would be regarded as a blessing, I'm sure, by your kind. We could not countenance that all of the emotional attention, i.e. fuel, would be directed and fixated on such a helpless being. Here we are, magnificent and brilliant, and you choose to direct your fuel to somebody else. This will wound us. Your attention going elsewhere threatens our sense of control, and it is an insult to us, a mighty criticism, which of course wounds. Furthermore, our resources will also be sought for this new arrival, time, energy, finances, and so forth, and with no emotional empathy to dictate that we should provide these things willingly, nay, under a sense of obligation. We regard the suggestion that our time be directed toward this individual, our energy and our finances, as a hindrance on our self-entitled behaviour. Again, a threat to our control. Our resources are ours alone, and we begrudge sharing them, unless such largesse brings additional reward for us, by way of control and fuel. But we think of ourselves first, and it is only then, if our narcissism dictates that we should apply it to the benefit of others, that we will do so, but only if it benefits us. You will never find an altruistic narcissist. This selfishness is necessary in order to preserve ourselves, and the fact that a child needs our resources is not going to change that mindset. We do not do anything just for the sake of it. There must be the ulterior motive for the prime aims. Pouring our resources towards somebody who will be oblivious to this for some time is not something that will find favour with some of our kind. From your perspective, we know that you regard us as selfish behaving this way. We see it as self-preservation, where we are greater in the ultra. The lesser and mid-range will not see it as selfish, and indeed cannot understand why you address such a label. They will come up with a variety of excuses and reasons of varying levels of plausibility as to why they are not behaving in a selfish fashion. I've got my life to lead. It's not the right time. I need space. I don't think it's appropriate for us. We've not known one another long enough. I need to pursue my career first. Children can come later. I feel that I am being trapped. Comments like those and similar are used in order to deny the accusation that the narcissist is being selfish, to deflect from it. You, as empaths, are the givers and the carers. We are not. If you wish to judge us for adopting such a stance, so be it. But for those of our kind who regard the issue of children as something to be avoided, that position is most unlikely to alter. We see only loss of our resources, loss of our fuel. Whilst some of our kind regard the additional benefits which can be derived from having children, the binding of the primary source, additional fuel provision, potential for traits and triangulation, etc., as worth obtaining, despite the likelihood of reduced fuel from the primary source and reduced resources, there are also those from our rank whose narcissism assesses the situation and decides it is not a price that is to be paid, and therefore those types of narcissists don't have children. What is behind that? Why is it that some of our number opt to have children and others refrain from doing so? I cannot offer a definitive answer, although I consider, from my experience and those that I have engaged with, that the proportion of our kind who decide to have children is greater than those who do not. I suspect that the temptations of further fuel provision and triangulation prove quite the draw. Furthermore, having children is a very easy way for a narcissist to bind an individual to them, and for the lazy lessers and the minimum of effort mid-rangers, that particularly appeals. Furthermore, it's also highly likely that the idea of securing our legacy through children provides attractive as well. The concept of a legacy is very important to the narcissist. My legacy is provided in an alternative way, not through children. But for many narcissists, that is what is behind the decision. It is the continued assertion of control through the legacy of the child living on. Seeing our own image and knowing that it will, more likely than not, outlive our mortal selves, does appeal to the need to maintain our idea of omnipotence. See how mighty we are, that our influence lives on in our offspring, and will do so in their own as our dynasty is forged. Such a notion does provide its own appeal. What then of me as the ultra? What tipped the balance for me so that I opted to remain child-free in order to remain light on my feet, unhindered and fully resourced? What caused me to view it that way? Was it the factors that I have described above which caused me to decide that having children was not for me? In part, yes, although I readily admit that the other elements and benefits from having issue are indeed attractive. However, whilst I weighed up these various benefits and disadvantages, it was something from my past which proved to be the deciding factor. It was something that has resonated with me for some time, and something that somehow buried deep inside me and stayed there for a while, until I decided to act on it and made my own decision as to my destiny in respect of the issue of children. The idea of seeing those forged in my own handsome image wending their way through the world and following in my footsteps was a strong pull indeed. But ultimately it came down to something else. This may be applicable to others of our kind as well, but for me the decision came down to this. I would not take the risk of him or her reminding me of you and what you did to me, because then they would be a repeated and ultimate threat to my control, and my narcissism said, I will prevent that threat from manifesting even before it has a chance to exist. Thus, I, the ultra, decided that children were not to be for me. If you want to protect your child from the narcissist in a situation where you have had children with a narcissist, you should utilize 2 assistance packages, which will save you a massive amount of money, time, and aggravation. They are How to Co-Parent with a Narcissist and Child Defender. Everybody who has accessed them has found them to be invaluable and has saved them heartache, aggravation, and wasted energy and money. You will find the links to them in the menu bar at narcsite.com. They are inexpensive compared to the amount of time and money they will save you. Use them.